Hi, everyone. I am Renée Bodie, the General Manager at Soka Performing Arts Center, and I am here with Steve Postell, who is the musical director for Crosby, Stills, for the Our House, the music of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, that we are going to be presenting on October 5th of 2024 at the Performing Arts Center. We're going to explore a little bit about the origins of the show, how the tour came about, the connection to the music, the creative process of interpreting and performing it, and some of the perspectives on the enduring legacy of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So I will say that I became involved in the timeline of this when I was approached by you, Steve, when you were currently in rehearsals with David and his band in January of 2023. And I know we had actually talked about booking a show with David on for April 30th of 2023. And then, of course, David passed. Can you tell us in your words about the origin of how this tour came about and what was your personal connection to the music of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and a little bit about how you came to be in David's band, and then how did this tour idea for Our House sort of originate?
Okay, we'll go back to uh, meeting David 30 years ago or so in New York City when they just started CPR, which was Crosby, Pevar, Raymond. And they were in the city and they wanted to do some writing. And my friend Jeff Pevar said, "Could we come by your studio?" And of course, so I met him then. And then subsequently, CPR did a show with my band, which was called Little Blue, at the Wheeler Opera House in Aspen, Colorado. And over the years, just all stayed in touch. I became very close with his son, James Raymond, and I would go to shows, and I got to know David more and more. And eventually, that turned into us writing some songs together, recording. I'm on the last two records. Um, and doing a few specific shows. We played at the Vancouver Island Music Fest. We played a benefit at the Ace Theater. So I was never in his band and touring with him, but we did some nice shows, and we always had a great rapport. He lived in Santa Ynez, which is north of Santa Barbara, and I would find myself there periodically, and I would always see if he was available. So I would visit him. He also, I got an interview set up for this film, which I'll tell you about in a bit, for the immediate family. So we went up there for that. So I would just go by. Sometimes we'd make music, sometimes we'd write, sometimes we'd just sit and talk. Um, so I went up there one time, and I don't have a good timeline of all this. All this is within the last 4 years. And he said, "Well, Steve, I just got some news. I was having trouble with my hand. I went and had surgery. It didn't work. It actually made it worse. So I can't play anymore. So I'm gonna write. We can write, we can record, but I'm done performing." And
Wow,
I said, "Well, okay, but you still sing great, and I could play all your guitar parts."
nice.
And we kind of laughed. I said, "Seriously, David, I can play Bach. I can play David Crosby." So I just put it
Very
in
good.
it. That was it. I didn't push it. But 4 months later or so, my phone rang. "So you really think you could play my guitar parts?" "I really do." So I went up to his house. We spent 3 days, me filming, which I have and I'll never share because it's very personal. Him playing, because he could still play, just not smoothly through a whole show. All of the great songs in the tunings, especially particularly the ones in the special tunings. So he taught me his catalog.
Wow.
Um, and I said, "All right, I'll learn it. I'll get back to you." He said, "Just in case this works." So I spent probably a couple months. I mean, I practiced that like I was practicing for a Bach recital. And some of it was just as difficult. It's
Right.
very specific stuff. And so I called him. I said, "I'm ready." I went up to the house. I played for him. He went, "Wow, okay." Then we got together with James. The three of us played. And right there and then he said, "Let's do it." And he got on the phone and started calling musicians to put a band together.
That's awesome.
So we did that in the moment. I mean, we called Dean Parks, we called, and then we started rehearsing. So we started with just the three of us. We picked the songs from the catalog. We went over them. We made sure the keys were right. And then we got together with the band. And I'm very grateful that this happened, that we actually played one time with David and the band at the center stage. And it was a beautiful.
Oh, nice.
And he was really excited. He was nervous. You think I can do this? And he was calling other people, you think I can do this?
Mm.
And but he was excited, really excited. And he was talking about getting the tour bus together and, all this stuff. And we talked on a Tuesday night about a couple things. He wanted to record so then I booked a show at Libero Theater. I have a connection there. Beautiful theater in Santa Barbara. I called them up. They said, wow, that'd be amazing. It's the 150th anniversary. Let's do the 150th anniversary show with David Crosby. Then I got Bruce Coburn to open that show. Everybody was super excited. David was really excited. And he called me a Tuesday night, kind of late. Let's record it. Let's do 2 nights. We'll bring in the truck. We'll record the show. It's a long story, but it's a good one.
Wow.
And then he has a script he wanted me to read because I know some big actors. He said, could you get this to so-and-so? I said, that's a cool idea. And that was Tuesday night. And the next call I got was from James the next day that he was gone. I didn't know what he was talking about. Like, it didn't make sense.
Wow.
I thought he meant, I didn't know what he was talking about at first. It didn't process. But he went to take a nap and he never woke up. So that was devastating on so many levels. I mean, more than the music thing was David had become this sort of father figure friend to me. Like we joked with each other. We just had a kind of rapport because I never wanted anything from him.
Right.
And I was one of the people who, I never was trying to get him to do. I mean, we did some stuff together that I would present to him, but so we just had a really nice rapport. So just losing that, realizing the legacy and the chance that we were going to go tour finally after knowing each other 30 years. So that was that. It was tough. And some months later, James and I started saying, there's been no memorial.
James
There's been
being his son. His son, James.
son, James Raymond,
Yeah.
who played in his band for 30 years.
Yeah.
Beautiful musician, beautiful keyboard player. I said, well, the libero would do it in a second. So that turned into let's do it. We got a date. We got Sean Colvin, Colin Hay, Richard Page, Chris Stills, but Nate McEwen, and a beautiful band, which was the band that was supposed to play the show. And we played the concert, and it was sold out. It sold out in like an hour.
Oh yeah.
And
did you do it on the same date, or did it was originally?
Oh, this was 7 months later.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We thought about doing it the same date, and it was like, no way. It's too.
Because I think you mentioned we decided to try and do this show even before that show finally played off.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Because that show wasn't until like August or something.
Right.
Anyway, we finally went, we should do it. I mean, and we put it together. We rehearsed it. We got the band together, and we did this beautiful show. And it's a long story, but word got out, and we started getting offers from different people, like,
Right.
would you like to tour? At first, it was kind of like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And then it just was like, yeah, we should honor, let's do it. That's how it happened. That's how it came to pass.
That's beautiful. So tell me about the players, each of the people, the players in the band, including yourself. I know your legacy, but a lot of people don't. So tell us about
Sure.
that.
Now the band is altered a little for this show. Um, some people are touring already. James is out with Skunk Baxter.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but we have, so for this show, I'll talk about on bass, which I'm really thrilled about, is Bob Glaub, who played with Crosby, Stills, Nash for 2 years, has been with Jackson Browne for years. He's played with everybody. He and my bandmate Leland Sklar are probably the two guys who played on most of the records
Everyone. Yeah.
in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So he's going to play bass. On drums is David's longtime drummer, Stevie DiStanislao, who's one of my top 4 or 5 drummers in the world. And he played with David. He was in CSN, he was in CPR, he was in Crosby Nash, he was in David Crosby. He was the guy that David went to for 28 years. Also a beautiful singer, which helps a lot with his music.
Sure.
The other guitar player is Jeff Pevar, who has been my friend for 43 years, we figured out. We met each other
Well,
on Bleecker Street. We both had gigs one night, and someone said, "You should go see this guitar player down the street." We met then, and Jeff was the P in CPR, but he actually played with Crosby before James did because he was playing with Marcone, and David saw that show,
yeah.
and David and Graham asked Jeff to be with David and Graham, and that turned into so they have a huge history. Um, and then on vocals uh, and guitar and harmonica is this phenomenal discovery. I mean, a lot of people knew about him, but this guy named Chris Pierce,
I know,
who I
Chris.
heard about um, because I read that he was opening for Neil Young.
Mhm.
And I happen to know that camp, and I know that Neil does not
Oh,
just
yeah.
randomly have people open for him. So I was like, who is this guy
I
that Neil?
presented Chris Pierce before. He's great.
Oh, yeah, he's really a wonderful presence and great
Yeah.
singer, and
Really
so
nice person too.
a great person. So I called him and I said, you have a connection to this music, and he was into it. He was touring with Steve Earle. He still is opening for Steve, but he took a break to do this tour with us and to play the show with you. And then on keyboard and vocal will be Michelle Willis, who was in two of David's. David had 3 bands at the end. The one that we had, one called the Lighthouse Band, um, and one called the Sky Trails Band. I think
Mm.
that's what it's called. And Michelle was in those 2 bands, and she's just one of those magically gifted people. She's a fantastic keyboard player and has this incredible expressive voice. And it's funny because Crosby was always raving about her to me and like, well, who is this person? And I did finally see them
Yeah.
play with her, and she was great, but she's really special. So
Nice.
she'll be doing the show as well. So that's going to be and then myself,
Yeah.
um, you know, I've done, I've played with a lot. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I've played with going back to Pure Prairie League and Eric Anderson and
Yep.
Ian Matthews and John Oates and Jennifer Warnes and I've done shows. I've played and I did a show with Jackson Browne and Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald 2 years ago, and played with all these people. In the last 7 years, I've played with the immediate family, and that is myself, Leland Sklar on bass, Russ Kunkel on drums, Danny Korchmar and Waddy Wachtel also on guitar and vocals. And that's an amazing project. And
And you guys
Danny
have a documentary
Tedesco,
that just came out.
yeah, yes. And Danny Tedesco
It's a
made
great, great documentary,
a
by the way.
fantastic documentary
Wonderful.
about that band.
Yeah.
So, I try to stay busy because it's preferable to the other.
To the other option. Very true. So I have a question. So when you approached the interpreting the music, because you originally started with David, I'm sure that affected it. Were you true or did you create some of your own arrangements? How did you work that out?
In most cases, well, one thing that's interesting because I went back after David passed and I didn't have him to say, what do you think of this? I
Yeah.
would go on YouTube and deep dive into all these versions over the years of David playing it, David and Graham playing it, CSN playing it, CSNY playing it. And of course, as with any creative project, it changed. These songs, some of small things like instead of going F to C, they went C to F when they got later, and then the
Huh.
tempos were a little different. So James and I got together because he'd been playing this music so much and sort of found what versions we liked the most and stayed pretty true to what they did. The the cases where that's not the case, there's not a lot. For example, one of the things that the way I found out about Chris Pierce is his manager sent me a version of Southern Man that he did.
Ah,
And
yeah.
it's completely different. It's in a different time
Huh.
signature. It's so powerful. So in
Wow.
that case, we do his version of
Hmm.
Southern Man. I think that's mostly the one exception. Uh, in general, in general, we're pretty true to some version of what they did.
Wow. Well,
Particularly the guitar parts. I really want to honor what
yeah,
David taught me.
sure. So obviously the music of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and is particularly poignant right now after David's death. What was it like performing for audiences on the tour that you've part of the tour that you've already done? What was that like? And do you have any particularly memorable experience that came across to share?
Well, I have to say probably the most memorable was playing, yeah, the most memorable was on the exact day, 55 years after they played Woodstock. We played Woodstock. We played the
Oh,
same,
wow.
we played Bethel Woods, which is where
Yes.
Woodstock was not in Woodstock. It was
Yes.
in Bethel
Right.
Woods.
Yeah.
And someone, I don't know, I'm curious to find out the history. Somebody put money and made it into a museum and a performance space, and it's a beautiful, it's a very exciting to
Oh,
be there.
at Bethel Woods?
Oh yeah,
Nice.
but there's a
Nice.
museum. They run the film Woodstock on loop. They have all the set lists from the artists who played, and it's
Wow.
very exciting. So Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young played on August 18th, and we played on August 18th, 55 years later.
That's incredible.
And some of the people there were at that show. There were a couple people who came in.
Wow.
I was there, I was there.
Wow, it gave me chills. That's amazing.
And we played a lot of the songs that were on that set list, which I never knew the whole set list. I just knew the movie. So that was special. Just also the catalog is, I don't, I mean, other than the Beatles, what's a catalog like that? Because now you had
Yeah,
four
it's true.
guys.
They're such iconic songs.
So we had to choose from. So we're doing some of the songs Neil did later on his own. Harvest Moon,
Yeah.
that wasn't CSNY, but it's and but the catalog is really phenomenal. It's hard to
Yeah.
believe that those four guys made that much great music. And of course, we can't play all night, so we're leaving out some songs.
It's true that the music resonates on a really deep level with all of us because it was such an integral part of our lives growing. I mean, not just growing up, but throughout throughout. I mean, it was incredible. So
Well,
then I have my one of the questions I have for you is, what is it that you want audiences to experience in the show, and what do you hope they leave with?
well, like you said, I think for people of a certain age, I'm hoping that younger people come to this too, because I don't think they get to hear music like this that much anymore. But
Although they listen to it, because my
I
kids
do
listen to
listen to
this
it.
music, yeah,
Yeah, we have to get the word out to them. Our
yeah,
audiences tend to be people who grew up with it. I remember the day someone played me Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and a lot of people do. I
yeah.
mean, that was it. I remember that day. There's only probably 5 or 6 records I remember the day I heard it.
Wow.
Uh, so I can tell looking at these audiences because David's gone. You're never gonna see Crosby, Stills, Nash or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young again. It's not gonna happen. And there's a lot of cover bands, but we have these intimate relationships with the music. I feel we bring an authenticity to it
Yes,
that is a bit unique. Um, and because everyone in the band has experience with them, including Chris, who
well, and connection to David almost directly, yeah,
to David or to CSNY, or in
right.
Chris's case to Neil Young. Um, and so I look out and I realize that there are people there that, like myself, this music meant a lot, and they're getting to hear it in a very faithful way, and and that's and they're getting to hear it live, and I think that's what it's all about, really, is sharing this experience that I get to have, we get to have, and they get to have.
I think we all learned how much we appreciate that shared experience of live music after COVID, when we
Yes.
couldn't, and
Oh,
it is
no question.
precious. It is, we all learned it's very precious. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to figure it out, like probably on average, at the least, a gig a week for 47 years.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, I had no gigs for 2 years.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
hadn't happened since I was 15 when I wasn't doing gigs yet.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it
For
was,
us in the venue world, it was,
yeah,
the stages were dark. That just never happens. Yeah,
it
it was very unprecedented time, but
was unprecedented. It was very surreal. Now,
yeah,
fortunately, the immediate family had a very great, this record company, Quarto Valley Records. They said, well, just go here. Here's a budget. Go make a record. Like, I don't wait.
yeah, that's true. A lot of musicians really did dig in and
We
create.
actually did
That's good.
remotely. We each did our
Yeah,
parts. At the time, there weren't vaccines. We weren't even all getting together. So we
right.
made a record with all of us in our own
That's
studios.
unique as well.
And
Amazing.
we made a couple videos all in our filming ourselves. We got this software and
Yeah,
then we got this great video director to put it all together. So we kept busy musically, which was great. I
yeah,
did a bunch of writing, but when we got back out to play, I don't take it for granted, and
yep.
I don't think audiences do either.
I don't think so either. I don't think venues do. Every time I step on that stage to announce, every time I think about it. Because I remember the moment, that I was able to come back on that stage and welcome people back to our hall. It was huge. So yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, this has been wonderful. And so I'm just thrilled and I can't wait for the show coming up October 5th.
Yeah.
It'll be wonderful. Thank you, Steve. Is there anything else you want to add or tell our audience?
Just I think it's a collaboration between the audience and this music and us. It's like there's 3 people.
Yes.
There's us playing it, there's this amazing music which lives on its own, and then there's the audience who gets to interact, and I think that's the combination you want, and I appreciate I'm looking behind you at this hall. I wish we were playing tomorrow night.
Oh, it's an amazing hall. We're very, very, very fortunate.
Yeah,
So,
it's
all
exciting.
right. Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much,
much.
Postell. We appreciate it. And yeah, we'll, everyone, we can buy tickets. You'll see the ticket link on our website, www.soka.edu/PAC. Thank you so much.